Now, without any further ado, I'm going to hand over to Murray Dudding, who's going to walk us through some of those new features in a tips and tricks session. Thank you, Murray.
Thank you, Stephen, and welcome everyone to our second session. So as Stephen was saying, we're now looking at our MYOB tips and tricks, and hopefully you can all see that.
Yep.
So in this session, we're going to be looking at some of the user-defined access tabs within Exo. And we're going to be focusing on version 2021.2, and Stephen's just talked you through a number of the features in 2021.2. So in this session, we're going to do a bit of a deeper dive into some of that functionality, including user-defined access within tabs within Exo, user-defined access to right mouse click options and job costing, which is a feature that people have been looking forward to for a while now. I'm going to give you a quick tip on how to easily insert lines within transactions within Exo. We're going to take a look at transactional business alerts and go through a worked example of how they can help manage a business process. We're going to close out by taking a look at some new features around extra fields based on sales order type. So without any further ado, let's take a look at hiding tabs within an Exo menu. So I'm going to open up our creditors just to illustrate what we're talking about here, and I'm going to go into a creditor account. So what we're looking at here are the tabs along here, and having the ability to control or hide those tabs. So I'm going to close out of our creditor account here, and I'm going to open up Exo config, and we'll do a worked example of how to do that. Whenever you do a demo, the screen's opening, it always takes, it feels like it's twice as long as it normally does. Okay, so I'm going to quickly go into our profile settings, and we can see here we've got a number of additional profiles that have been added. These are user profiles, which means that we can configure these on a user by user basis. So it gives you a lot of granularity in terms of the control around access to tabs. So if we pick our creditor account screen that we looked at earlier, and we go into that creditor account screen, we may, for example, want to hide the transactions within that screen, or say discounts and pricing. We may not want to have a particular user having visibility to those transactions, or having visibility to those discount pricing. Or it may not be appropriate for them, for example, to have access to history notes. So let's pick a couple of accounts at random, a couple of tabs, I should say. I'm going to hit save, minimize our Exo, and refresh settings to make sure those changes have been updated in the system. Let's just maximize that window again. Go back into our creditors account. And we can see that those tabs, the history notes, for example, are now no longer visible. This functionality is available not just in creditors, but in debtors as well. Contacts, general ledger account details, stock item details, and we know there's quite a lot of tabs inside stock items, and serviceable units as well. So not only does it give you the ability to control access to certain functionality within Exo, it also simplifies the system, so that people are only having to view, or only looking at the transactions or the tabs that have relevance to them. The next feature I wanted to touch on is hiding some of the right mouse click options inside job costing. So within this, I'm going to open up the job costing tab, And hopefully if I keep talking to you while that opens up, it won't seem like we're in this awkward period of silence. And once we get that open, we'll go into a job and take a look at what I'm talking about. So let's just jump into a job. I'll pick the cost tab as an example. And I'm just going to mark all lines just to really illustrate the point. If I right mouse click on one of these lines, these are the options that we're talking about here. Right mouse click, and if I choose mark lines, we can see there's a series of other options as well. So let's imagine a scenario where we don't want someone to have access to cancelling a line or writing off a line. So we can go into our profiles, go back into Exo config, and we can control that. So let's just close out of this job. Minimize job costing and jump back into Exo. Back to our profile screen. And here are the user profile settings that we're talking about. Again, because it's a user profile, it means that we can control this on a user by user basis. So it's not one size fits all. It's highly customizable to individuals. And we can see here that we've got profile settings for each one of those tabs inside job costing. So we're not just limited to the cost tab. I'm just using that as a worked example. It could be right mouse click features on the quote line, for example, as well. Let's just pop up our editor window and let's remove those cancel line and write off line features, both from within the initial drop down and also the marked lines as well. Click OK and hit save. Bring our job costing back up. Refresh settings to update the system with those config changes. And go back into our job. Now, if we go back to our cost tab, I'll mark all the lines again. If we right mouse click, we can see that our write off line and our cancel line drop down functions have been removed. Everything else is still there because I didn't untick them, but those features have been disabled for this particular user. Another little tip that not a lot of people know about is if you wanted to add a line in a transactional screen within Exo, say I wanted to add another line into between the air suspension and the air pressure gauge, I can simply hit the insert key and that will allow me to add a line in there. A little tip for you, not many people know that, useful feature within the system. If I didn't pick the right screen, if I didn't pick the right line, I can just hit escape and close out of there. Okay, so that's job costing right mouse click options. The next thing that we wanted to take a quick look at is business alerts and how we can use business alerts to manage some processes within Exo. Now, business alerts are fantastic for this. They can pop up warnings for people that are processing a particular transaction within the system, not necessarily preventing them from doing it, although there are blocking features in business alerts as well, but just little reminders or warnings that say, hey, are you sure you've done this right? Now, let's do a worked example. So we're going to close out of job costing. And we're going to go into Exo itself. I'll just maximize that screen if I can. Here we go. And in this worked example, what we're going to do is we're going to process some on costs. We're going to process an inwards goods costing without applying on costs to that inwards goods. And we've got a little business alert that's going to warn us just to make sure that we're doing it right. So if I pick a, doesn't really matter which order I pick a purchase order here. Just as another little tip, inside our purchase order screen, in fact, inside most of the screens where we've got foreign currency functionality, in the Actions tab, we've got this little feature here to refresh exchange rates. So if I utilize this, I can now update that particular purchase order with the current exchange rate for Singapore dollars. Now, I'm going to receipt this good in, this purchase order in. Receipt all, and we're going to move on to our costings. I'll untick the it's always something to catch you out of there. Okay, so what we're going to do, and in this scenario, so we've got some goods that we've brought in from overseas, from Singapore, and we're going to try and process this without adding any freight costs or on costs to our invoice goods receipt. And here's our little business alert that pops up saying, hey, so on costs haven't been applied here. Are you sure you want to continue? If I click cancel, it'll just let me close out. And then I can go on and add those on costs if it's appropriate. But otherwise, it'll just let me carry on and process them through. I should have picked one with less lines. Let's close out of it. We've and then we can just complete the order, complete the invoice. So the takeaway here is not so much that we can manage your inwards goods process a little bit better. The takeaway here is that we can use business alerts within pretty much all of the transactions within Exo now to control certain functionality, and just to make sure that people are following correct process when they're doing that transaction. The last thing I wanted to take a quick look at was extra fields based on sales order type. Now, again, this is one of the features that's been introduced in 2021.2. And what it allows us to do is to control the additional information that we're capturing based on the different types of sales orders. So I'm going to go into our sales order screen. Not inside job costing, I'm not. Bear with me for a second here. Managed to close out of Exo. So Grant, we're having another coffee break now?
No, we're not, but you're doing fine.
There we go. We're back, folks.
All good.
So first thing I'd like to do is just create a new quote within our sales order screen. So I'm sure most of you are aware that within sales orders, we can create quotations as well as sales orders. And this applies not just to Exo, but to Exo on the go as well, and CRM for that matter too. Now, if I create a new quotation, I've got a couple of additional fields. I've got 3 extra fields sitting here: customer order note, marketing source, and additional notes. The marketing source extra field allows us to capture how that customer found out about us and how they contacted us, whether it was through referral or our website or whatever. We've also got an additional notes field that we can capture additional information about this customer, and it may be the first time that we've spoken to them that called us up, and so we may want to record some additional information about that. We can do that inside this field. Now, you may be wondering why I just typed that. What I'd like to show you right now is that inside Exo, it has the ability to check our spelling mistakes. And so it may not be visible to you all, but my quack is being highlighted or underlined in little red dashes, denoting that I've spelt it incorrectly. If I right mouse click on this, I get other options to correct that spelling mistake. So that's a feature which is very useful inside any system. Okay, so that's our quotes and the extra fields that have been associated with it. If I close out of this now, and now create a sales order instead, you can see we've got a different set of extra fields. We've still got our customer order number. Extra fields can be consistent across all our different sales order types, but now we've got fields which are relevant to sales orders rather than quotations. We've got a field here which allows me to select the freight company we're going to use to ship this order. We've also got a cubic volume extra field that I can use to record the cubic volume of this particular order. Just as a little aside, we have quite a few customers who use extra fields on stock items to calculate things like cubic volume and the weight of sales orders automatically. And we can fairly simply compile the cubic volume of any given product, multiply it by the quantity of that product, and calculate a cubic volume. We can extend that out even further and work out how many pallets would be required for the order, for example. So yeah, all functionality that can be built into your system. So hopefully that sparked some ideas in your mind around what can be done inside Exo and whetted your appetite into some cool features that are available in some of the latest versions. I'll pass back now to Grant. Thank you to the user group forum for allowing me this time to present these to you, and I look forward to your comments and questions in the chat.